All right. It is. Oh, yes. People asking if we're live yet. So this is Herb Talk number 12. It's been 3 months as of today of doing Herb Talks. That's a good bit. That's really awesome. Um, but we have so much more to do. So much more to do. Um, I've got 5 years worth of content easily just doing this every week. So I'm actually going to try to do more. I mean, I am doing more with the courses and everything else, but yeah, there's so much that you can put into or talk about with health. There's just so much to it. There's so many different issues and problems out there. But today, solely, we are focused on autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease, there are hundreds of recognized autoimmune diseases, right? Or autoimmune conditions. Um, we're going to touch lightly today on some of the main ones that are out there, some of the main expressions of autoimmune disease, if you will. We're going to talk about some different herbs that help with those. And then we're going to talk about common triggers, right? So we'll dive into all of that um, on today's series. So, welcome. My name is Matt Pollard, if you didn't already know. Um, and This is Herb Talk, where normally we go through a series of herbs, but we are doing an autoimmune series for the next 9 months. We've got This is our second week, so we've got 37 weeks after this. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to throw off those numbers when we're like at week, 22 or something like that. But that's what we've got right now. So buckle up and get ready. And if you haven't seen the first one, go back and watch it because it's a lot of really great information. Quick recap on that, if you will. We learned about the immune system and the two different ways that the immune system act or operates, right? You have the innate immune system on one side and the adaptive immune system on the other. And the innate immune system is just reactive. The adaptive immune system is the part that is focused and targeted, right? So it's the part that um, reads and disease or anything foreign. And what it does is um, it will create antibodies, right? And those antibodies will allow it to attack it and be more targeted next time around, right? So those were the two parts of the immune system that we learned about last week. So that's just a quick recap. So today we'll go through these three things pretty quick and we'll open up for questions and all that good stuff. So there are over 100 recognized autoimmune conditions, right? That's a good bit. But like I said, we're going to touch lightly on some of the main ones today. And then when we get into week 16, we're actually going to focus a whole herb talk on each one of these that we're going to go over today. So, and then there's other ones out there that I know people are dealing with. Um, usually, usually, autoimmune disease is fairly similar to one another, right? They have different expressions, but most autoimmune conditions are basically the same, right? Your immune system is overactive and attacking tissues, right? Um, so you have a lot of commonalities with that. Now, when you're addressing them, there are some specificities in there that you would address, right? But for the most part, these ones that we're going over do cover the multitude of autoimmune conditions out there, and most of you have heard about them. So while they're given different names, right, and affect different parts of the body, they all share the same underlying pattern, right? The immune system is reacting against the body's tissues. Oh, that was Jennifer. Um, so understanding the spectrum is important, right? Because it helps move away from the thinking of these as completely separate diseases when they're not, right? Instead, seeing them as different expressions of the same core problem, right? The immune system dysregulation or loss of tolerance. That's also what we learned last week is the definition of autoimmune disease, which is the immune dysregulation and loss of tolerance, right? So, the first one we're going to go over today is rheumatoid arthritis. We're just going to touch lightly on what this is, okay? A lot of you know what this is because you might be dealing with it, right? Um, but rheumatoid arthritis is primarily, it affects the joints. The immune system targets the synovial linings of the joints, leading to inflammation, swelling, stiffness, and over time joint damage. Right, so it can start to wear and tear on those joints, and it's an active immune driven process. Right, so there's a difference in having conditional pain um, and then having an immune active response to that lining of your joints, right? So there's a difference. You go work out and you're sore, your joints are sore or something, you get injured and your joints sore or something, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, okay? No. Um, Consistent injury and consistent toxins and different things like that can lead to that, but it's not what you're dealing with there. So this is a completely different issue altogether. And we have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, affects the thyroid gland. In this condition, the immune system produces antibodies that target thyroid tissue and gradually reducing its ability to produce hormones. Um, this leads to symptoms like fatigue, weight gain, cold sensitivity, and slowed metabolism. Right. So I know a few people where that this is affected, right? Hashimoto's. Um, and then you have lupus. Lupus is one of those that's really difficult, but it's a systemic lupus erythematosus is what it's called. Erythematosus is considered a systemic autoimmune condition, meaning it can affect multiple organs at once, right? The immune system can target skin, joints, kidneys, brain, blood vessels. It's characterized by widespread inflammation and can present very different from person to person. So, lupus really sucks. I mean, it just attacks everything, right? But it also varies. So, it's very difficult to pinpoint. But you can see the overactive immune system and the antibodies created towards the tissues. Um, Multiple sclerosis. I've dealt with a few patients. I've had the privilege of helping a few different patients. One was actually here in Alabama um, about 10 years ago. I was helping her. Um, and she was really, she was really old, but she was dealing with it hardcore. And we helped her a good bit, um, at least manage her condition. When you get to a certain age and you're a lot more fragile, and healing processes are obviously a little bit more difficult to activate and stuff. The best you can do, and a lot of times, and especially with a condition like this, is manage it, right? So we did really well with managing her pain. I mean, she was pretty much pain free, which was great. She didn't have any flare ups or anything like that after about a couple of months. So she was actually able to live what a normal life would look like for her, which is really great. But that was actually here in Alabama. We worked with her. But multiple sclerosis affects the nervous system. The immune system attacks the myelin sheath, right? The myelin sheath is a protective covering around the nerves. And this disrupts nerve signaling and can lead to symptoms such as muscle weakness, coordination issues, numbness, and neurological dysfunction. And it can be very, very painful at times as well. Um, when you expose those nerves that have been protected this whole time, it can be very sharp pains involved. Um, Psoriasis. All right. Psoriasis primarily affects the skin. It involves rapid turnover of skin cells driven by immune activation, leading to thickened, scaly patches. Although it shows up on skin, it's rooted in the immune system dysfunction, right? And inflammation. You got inflammatory bowel disease, right? So we're getting through these. We're about halfway through through the diseases. All right, there's a lot of them, like I said. Um, with these, though, most others stem from. We'll basically put it that way. Um, or you have these and something else a lot of times. That's in the autoimmune kind of area. So inflammatory bowel disease, which includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, right? So those are other, um, basically, it's included in inflammatory bowel disease. Um, affects the digestive tract, right? So the immune system targets the lining of the gut, leading to chronic inflammation, pain, diarrhea, impaired nutrient absorption. So that's where getting that gut right and strong is really important. Um, eating for downregulation of that inflammation is super important. So type 1 diabetes affects the pancreas. The immune system specifically targets and destroys beta cells, which are responsible for producing insulin. Without insulin, the body cannot properly regulate blood sugar levels. There are other ways to produce energy, um, and without using insulin. And so this is where you would want to harness that, right? You want to harness as much of the ketones as possible. And then you want to, but this can be tricky, right? This is one of those tricky situations. It always depends on how far along you are in these conditions and the extremity and how you approach it, right? So that's why we try to take a gentle approach at all times. That's what the app is for, is to help guide you. Oh, by the way, if y'all didn't know, if you are dealing with an autoimmune condition and you're looking for some easy way to understand this and to help with your condition, I developed an app. It's called Autoimmune Ally. If you want the app, it's in the classroom. If you go to the classroom, go to Autoimmune app, it is now released on the Apple Store. So you can actually download it on the Apple Store. Now I'm about to work on getting it in the Google Store, um, or the Android part of it. So um, I just started looking into that process, and it's very similar to the Apple one. I hope it's a little bit easier though. But yeah, so you can actually download it on your phone now, which is really awesome. I had to go back and forth with them because they are, um, they're very tied into the medical industry, so it was very difficult to get something like this passed. But I was able to do it, so that was fun. Very interesting experience. But so type 1 diabetes and then Sjorgen's syndrome, right? So this targets the exocrine glands, particularly those responsible for producing saliva and tears. This leads to symptoms like dry mouth, dry eyes, but it can affect other organ systems as well, right? And then fibromyalgia, which you might find these two actually together, Sjorgen's and fibromyalgia a lot of times. Fibromyalgia also in lupus is similar. Fibromyalgia is somewhat different in classification, right? But it is often grouped in this spectrum due to its association with immune dysfunction and chronic inflammation, right? It's characterized by widespread pain and fatigue and heightened sensitivity in the nervous system. Um, and then we have celiac disease. So celiac, it affects the gut, but it's also systemic in its effects, right? So it is triggered by gluten, right? It's basically a gluten allergy, but it's way more than that. A lot of people have gluten sensitivities, but a gluten sensitivity is not celiacs, right? So there's a difference. Um, it leads to an immune response that damages the lining of the small intestine. This impairs nutrient absorption and can contribute to a wide range of symptoms beyond digestion, right? So it can really wreck you. And if you're not careful and you develop, and I say develop celiacs because it's not normal just to have, it's something that's developed, right? It can near death, it can be really, really extreme. So you have to be very careful with what you do and how you do it, right? Um, Now, when looking at all these conditions, right, together the pattern becomes clear, right? When you start to look at these, the location of disease may differ, right? Joints, thyroid, brain, skin, gut, pancreas, but the underlying issue is similar. The immune system has lost the ability to properly distinguish between self and non-self and is generating a sustained inflammatory response against the body. This is why focusing only on location of symptoms can be very limiting, right? You have to focus on the whole broader spectrum, the whole body. So addressing those factors that influence immune function, such as gut health, inflammation, environmental exposure, stress, and diet becomes essential in understanding and managing autoimmune conditions, right, as a whole. Um, when this barrier is compromised, uh, that selectivity is lost, right? So tight junctions between intestinal cells in the gut begin to loosen, and the substances that normally would not enter the bloodstream are able to pass through, right? So um, these can include partially digested proteins, bacterial fragments, toxins, and other immune triggering compounds. So, once these substances enter circulation, the immune system recognizes them as foreign and mounts a response, right? So, this creates repeated and sustained immune activation over time. This constant exposure increases the likelihood that immune system begins to loosen or to lose precision in its targeting, right? So it's um it's kind of just you're just throwing everything at it, taxing the crap out of your immune system in every way, shape, or form, right? So when your immune system doesn't have the right nutrients because you can't get them into your body, right? Um, when you're when you are allowing foreign objects into your immune system, um, you have the issue of just extreme taxation when your immune system's not able to properly expel toxins right through the lymphatic system. You're having backup happen, right? So you there's all these different avenues of where our immune systems are being taxed and we're not taking care of ourselves. And by the way, a lot of these things that I'm talking about were normal daily activities and normal parts of life that we just don't do anymore. We live a lot more sedentary lives now, so less movement, so our lymphatic system isn't properly working. Um, we live toxic lives now, our environments that we're in, industrial environments. I mean, you ride through, a lot of you are out here in Clanton area and stuff, but you ride through Lomax right there, and you just smell the creosote coming off of those railroad ties, right, that they're breaking out there. Those are environmental toxins. Can't be good for you, right? Obviously, but those sort of things, we just live in toxic environments, and so you're constantly taxing your immune system. So the best thing you can do is eat the best you can, get in the best environment you can, understand mental stress is a huge deal, and regulate that as well. I believe that I am coming to the conclusion that the Sabbath was meant. for a reason, for us to actually have a day of rest because it is extremely important for us to not overtax ourselves in every way, shape, and form. We will live much happier lives if we actually take a day of rest. But that's a whole other herb talk, right? So let's get into this. So yeah, once these substances are circulating in your or in your system, it creates these immune responses and repeated sustained immune activation over time. This constant exposure increases the likelihood that the immune system will just go rampant, right? Um, this is where molecular mimicry becomes important. Molecular memory or mimicry occurs when a foreign substance, such as a protein from a virus or bacteria, is has a structural similarity to proteins found in the body's own tissues. Now, if you remember, if you were on the parasite stuff, you remember parasites will create molecular mimicry. They'll do that out of creating a an immune, say they'll control histamine, they'll do all sorts of stuff, but they'll create different mimicry or molecules that the immune system will recognize and say, okay, everything's good here, so it won't attack the parasite, right? So parasites are good at doing that on their own, but some bacterias and things like that will also have a similarity to your body's own tissues. So the immune system creates antibodies against the foreign invader, right? But because of this similarity, those antibodies can also bind to your body's own cells. And it's more of the binding process that is the similarity, right? So it makes it to where the immune system will recognize it when it binds to it. Um, so, for example, certain viral proteins may resemble components of the thyroid tissue, joint tissue, or nerve tissue, right? And once the immune system is activated against the virus, it may continue reacting against those tissues even after the infection has been resolved. This creates a situation where the immune system is not only responding to a threat, but it's now reacting to the body itself, right? Leaky gut increases the likelihood of this process because it exposes the immune system to a wider range of antigens. And the more foreign material that enters circulation, the greater the chance that someone or something will resemble the body closely enough to trigger cross reactivity. This is why I don't like anything injected into my body. And um, this may sit well with some people, may not sit well with some people, but I don't think that injection is natural in any way, shape, or form. If you have to put an injection into your body, obviously something serious is seriously wrong, right? The way that we figured out that we could inject people with things is by watching spiders and snakes and venomous creatures that punctured into the blood and put their poison in us, right? That's how we figured that out. Um, so you know, I don't think crossing the proper channels of the body to filter and put the right things in our body is the right way of going about things. Do I think that it is necessary under certain circumstances? Of course, there's always um, different conditions that you have to understand that could be life saving, right? Obviously, but should it be a normal part of life? No, not at all. Absolutely not. Um, so it's extremely invasive, and your body is exposed to more foreign objects, right? Like injections of any sort, shape, or form, even if your body uses them right properly, it's still foreign material that's going across the blood-brain barrier, across all these barriers that have been set in place that that it should be filtered through, right? So I don't think it's the right way to do it if it's just chronic, and chronic issues and stuff like that. Obviously, there's some life saving techniques and things that it can be involved with it that are really great. But the more foreign material that enters the circulation, the greater chance that something will resemble the body closely enough to trigger cross reactivity, right? So, underlying both of these processes is chronic low grade inflammation, right? Um, Inflammation, when acute and controlled, is a necessary part of healing, right? So, inflammatory responses are necessary. However, when inflammation becomes persistent and systemic, it creates an environment where the immune system is constantly active. So, chronic low grade inflammation can be driven by poor diet, gut dysbiosis, environmental toxins, ongoing infections, and sustained stress. This state keeps immune cells in a heightened state of alert, right? And it reduces effectiveness of regulatory mechanisms that normally keep the immune system in balance. And in this environment, the immune system is it's more likely to overact and misidentify targets, right? So, and sustain immune responses that should have been temporary, right? So, and over time, this sets the stage for the breakdown of the of immune tolerance, um, the development of autoimmune conditions. So, um, taken together, right, increased intestinal permeability, molecular mimicry, and chronic low grade inflammation form a connected pathway, right? The gut allows more antigens into the system. The immune system responds and may begin to cross react, and persistent inflammation enforces and amplifies the entire process, right? So, and we're doing this to ourselves every single day, right? This is why it's important to backtrack a little bit and get your diet right. That way, you don't develop these issues. Um, a lot of us, these things pop up, and we're like, oh, where did this come from, or why is this happening? It's something you've been doing to yourself for a long time, and finally, your body can't deal with it anymore. So, these are all developed conditions for the most part. Um, there is a little bit of a genetic factor, which we will get into the epigenetics on another series. We'll get a little bit more in depth on that. Um, but that's only 20 to 30% of the problem, right? The rest of it, 70 to 80% of the issue is environment, all together environment. That's what triggers it. That's what sustains it. So if we can change our environment, we can actually change the genetics as well. So, and we'll get to that. We're going to jump into herbs real quick. Um, Herbs that help this specific thing. Like I said before, some of the herbs you will hear multiple times in this whole series because we're going to approach it from the angle of what we're specifically talking about that day. So today we're going to talk about ashwagandha. Um, Ashwagandha is classified as an adaptogen, meaning it helps the body regulate its response to stress rather than simply stimulating or suppressing a single pathway, right? So, one of its primary effects is on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, HPA axis. It's easier to say HPA axis, but it's hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Um, So the HPA axis, which controls the body's stress response, and chronic activation of this system leads to elevated cortisol levels, right? So, which disrupts your circadian rhythms and downstream immune dysregulation, right? So over time, this contributes to increased inflammation and reduced immune balance. Ashwagandha helps normalize this stress response. It is shown to lower elevated cholesterol or not cholesterol, cortisol levels, um, and improve resilience to both physical and psychological stress, right? It's actually been shown to reduce cortisol levels by 26%, I believe it is. Pretty phenomenal, right? Pretty phenomenal when you're talking about just a simple herb that you can take and reduce your stress load. I think of it as I'm walking around the world and a bunch of stress is being thrown at me, right? But ashwagandha is like a shield. I'm just like, whatever, I'm just like, keep on going. It's not a big deal. It's kind of how it is, right? It's really awesome. In addition to its effects on hormones, um, ashwagandha also influences inflammatory pathways, right? So it has been shown to reduce pro inflammatory cytokines such as TNF alpha, IL-6, both which are commonly elevated in autoimmune conditions, right? So this is something that turmeric also helps, and we learned about that last week. So this dual action, calming the nerve system or the nervous system and reducing inflammatory signaling makes it particularly useful when stress is a major driver of immune dysfunction. So ashwagandha may support thyroid function, energy levels, and sleep quality, right? All of which are often disrupted in individuals with chronic inflammation or autoimmune disease. It's important to note, though, because of that stimulation of the thyroid, it's not good for Graves' disease. So this is where the specificity comes in, right? Um, Graves' disease is overstimulated thyroid. Now, the ashwagandha would be great for Hashimoto's, right? Because Hashimoto's is hypothyroidism, not hyperthyroidism, right? So really, really great for Hashimoto's, not so great for Graves' disease. So there are some different things you have to look at and specify. When you go into the app and you go into the herbs section, you'll see all the different diseases listed out. You can click whichever one you're dealing with, and it will give you a list of the herbs that pertain to your specific situation. So that way you don't get confused on which ones to take, which ones not to take. Like I said, it's basically an all-encompassing app, and I'm continually updating it and doing new things. I've actually got one that I've put coinciding to it, which is a 9-month track of autoimmune disease. You literally pick your condition, and then you set your goal, and you're off, and it tells you what to do from this month to this month, and then you go into the next stage from this month to this month. It's really cool. Um, and so I'm hopefully I'll have that one finished within the next month. I'll be able to release it. Um, but so you'll have two different options of autoimmune apps that you can choose that will hopefully help you regulate your issues and possibly go into remission. So Boswellia, or Boswellia serrata, also known as frankincense, really good stuff, um, in biblical, of course, works through a different mechanism. Right, this is particularly effective for reducing inflammation in joints and gastrointestinal tract. Phenomenal with joints. I use it. It is awesome. I use it in conjunction with turmeric, and it's awesome. Its primary action is the inhibition of 5-lipoxygenase enzyme, commonly referred to as 5-LOX, right? 5-LOX. This enzyme is involved in the production of leukotrienes, which are inflammatory compounds that play a key role in chronic inflammation conditions, especially those affecting the joints, and airways and the gut as well. So, by inhibiting 5-LOX, Boswellia reduces the formation of these leukotrienes, therefore, or thereby, um, lowering inflammation at its source. So this makes it especially useful in conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, where leukotriene-driven inflammation is significant. Um, and I would imagine that it would help in any bronchial or asthma issues as well. significantly. So boswellia has also been shown to help reduce pain, improve joint function, um, support the integrity of the intestinal lining in the gut. It can calm inflammatory signaling and may contribute to improved digestion, digestive function, and reduced irritation, which is really great for autoimmune conditions, really great for everybody, right? Um, I love taking it when I've injured myself or something like that is phenomenal for that. And I tell everybody about it. Like, if they injure themselves, like, dude, this is going to help you heal super quick. It's really, really great for injuries and pain. Um, but unlike anti-inflammatory agents that broadly suppress the immune function, right, boswellia tends to modulate inflammation without significantly impairing normal immune activity, right? So um, it's commonly used in a capsule or an extract form, often standardized with boswellic acids. And typical dosing depends on concentration and formula. Just read the labels; they've got it for whatever um, dosage or whatever method they've prepared it. So we're going to talk quickly about triggers, and then we'll open up um, for questions and stuff and talks. These ones are going a little bit longer. Sorry, guys. There's just a lot of information to get out there about it. But gluten, dairy, nightshades are commonly identified as trigger foods in autoimmune conditions because they can promote inflammation, disrupt the gut barrier, stimulate immune responses in susceptible individuals. Gluten is one of the most well known triggers, right? So it is a protein found in wheat, barley, rye. In certain individuals, gluten can increase intestinal permeability by stimulating the release of a protein called zonulin, which loosens the tight junctions of the gut lining. This allows larger particles to pass through the bloodstream and increase immune activation. In people with celiacs, gluten directly triggers an autoimmune response against the small intestine. However, when even outside of celiac disease, some individuals experience non celiac gluten sensitivity. That's what I was talking about, where gluten still promotes inflammation and immune activation without the same level of intestinal damage because of its effects on gut permeability and the immune signaling. Gluten is often removed in autoimmune protocols, right? So you just want it's part of eliminating some of the possible triggers of your issues, right? Gluten's not good for anybody in its current state. Clarify that. Gluten is not good for anybody in its current state of how we get it and what plant we get it from. But so it's always a part of elimination protocol when you're going into autoimmune disease. Now, dairy can also be problematic, right? Particularly due to proteins such as casein and whey. Casein is, in particular, can be difficult to break down, right, for some individuals and may contribute to gut irritation, immune activation. In certain cases, casein peptides can resemble human proteins closely enough to contribute to cross reactivity to in similar molecular mimicry, basically. So, additionally, dairy can stimulate insulin and growth factor pathways, which contribute to inflammation. In some individuals, lactose intolerance can further complicate this by causing digestive stress, which indirectly affects immune function. While some people tolerate dairy well, it is commonly removed during elimination phases of the diet to assess its impact, right? So if you don't know, you don't know. So I removed dairy when I was 19 years old. I completely, wait, 19, 20, 20 years old. I completely removed dairy from my diet and it was amazing. Now I've reintroduced dairy into my diet and I don't have the same issues. That's the key is when you get your body regulated and functioning correctly, some of these things can be reintroduced. A lot of these things, some of these things shouldn't be reintroduced, right? Especially for autoimmune disease. You should, be cautious on how you reintroduce foods. But a lot of this is temporary. I suggest getting raw milk from your local dairy farmer rather than processed, homogenized, hormonal injected, crazy, ridiculous food or milk that you get from the store, even if it's whole milk and organic. It still has to go through very specific standards of the USDA, and those standards pretty much ruin the food, right? Anything you find in a grocery store pretty much sucks. I hate to say it like that, but you have to do your best when you're in the grocery store to get the best things possible. But everything in the grocery store has to adhere to USDA standards, and those standards are corrupt, just plain and simple. So, everything in there is meant to last on a shelf. It's not meant to be good for your health. That's a rhyme. That's a good one. I should keep that. Somebody needs to write that one down. So so in some individuals that have issues with dairy, eliminate it. It's very difficult to get rid of dairy. A lot of people love it. A lot of people enjoy it very much. Same thing with bread, right? So same thing with gluten. Um, Very difficult for a lot of individuals to get rid of. It's addicting. I understand, but these addictions are possibly what led to where you're at right now. So it is important to understand some of these things have to go at least for a little while, right? So, but we have assessed dairy for particular individuals, and it's fine, and a lot of individuals, especially if you go to the raw stuff, so much better for you. Has a lot of active enzymes and active things in there that have not been killed that actually help you process it. So it's really great. Um, Nightshades are a group of plants, including tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and white potatoes, right? So these foods contain compounds such as lectins and alkaloids, including solanin, which can affect the gut lining, right, and the immune system in sensitive individuals. And we talked a little bit about lectin um, last week because my mom had a question about it, and I think it was last week. But lectins combine to intestinal lining and may contribute to increased permeability in some cases, right? And there are high heat lectins. So lectins are in a lot of things like grains and such. When they're cooked, normally they break down. It's not a big deal. But some of the lectins that you find in like tomatoes do not break down under high heat. So they can still cause gut permeability. Alkaloids can have effects on nerve signaling and may aggravate symptoms in certain autoimmune or inflammatory conditions. While nightshades are not problematic for everybody, some individuals report increased joint pain, inflammation, or digestive issues when consuming them, and acid reflux. I've seen a lot of that with tomatoes. Um, so yeah, it's you have to obviously read your body and understand where your body's at. But first, eliminate and then start to figure it out because when you're constantly taxing your body, you have no idea where it's coming from. So it's best to get clean and get operating functionally really well and then start to reintroduce things so you can understand what your body responds to, right? These foods are not inherently harmful to all people, right? But in the context of autoimmune disease, the immune system is already dysregulated and more reactive and taxed, and removing common triggers like gluten, dairy, and nightshades can reduce the overall inflammatory load and help identify specific sensitivities, right? So, for this reason, many autoimmune protocols begin with a period of elimination. This is pretty much across the board for people dealing with autoimmune disease or that have autoimmune protocols. I'm not the only one that's doing something like this, right? So, and followed by a structured reintroduction, right? So, this allows individuals to observe how their body responds and determine which foods may contribute to symptoms of immune activation. So, um, which condition are you personally dealing with or care about today? That's opening it up for questions, y'all. um, so y'all are more than likely, or more than. Let me get everybody in the. I totally forgot about the drawing. We got some people on here that are going to win something at the end of the month. I have not decided what we're going to do a giveaway on this month. Let me get Pastor Chris in here, Miss Sarah. All right. Yeah, we got everybody in here today. All right. Sweet. If you weren't here for the last raffle, I got a raffle app now. So all your names are listed there, and we've got it, all your entries in here. And so we will, at the end of the month, we'll do a raffle for something at some point during this series, probably around the 6 to 8 month mark, somewhere around there. We're gonna give away like a monthly blood test deal for like a few months to be able to get your blood test done and figure out what's going on inside of your body, which is really fun to do. Um, you know, blood tests are pretty cool. Um, the way that this one is, it's not like super invasive. So it's really interesting the different methods they've come up with doing blood tests and stuff. But it's an at-home deal, so you just put it on your arm. It fills a little vial, and then you send it into the lab, and within a few days, you have your blood test, which is really awesome. You can know in real time every single month what's going on inside of your body, which is pretty fantastic. So, what y'all want to talk about today? Is there any messages? I haven't been checking. I'm down for blood tests. Send me info. Okay, cool. I'll do that. And there, you will be addressing issues as it relates to mental health. I jumped the gun on you. Oh yeah. Yeah, so we'll get into a lot of that, stress factors, how it affects the immune system for sure, for sure. I didn't realize everybody was on the chat, so I got to get used to pulling up the chat while I'm talking. So, any questions today? I know it's a lot.
Hey, and I know. Hey, Matt, how you doing, man? Um,
Hey,
in
fantastic.
reference to the mental health piece, what are some things that you can take just to kind of improve outlook? And maybe you talked a little bit about ashwagandha and how it helps maybe with some sleep.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Well, ashwagandha is really great for mood as well. Um, yeah, ashwagandha is fantastic. Like, so some of the things. So if you're, a little overthinking or anxietal on that edge of things that are really good to take are stuff like ashwagandha. L-theanine is phenomenal for calming and clarifying the mind. um, if you naturally drink a coffee or caffeine in the mornings, taking L-theanine with the caffeine is something that I do often because it does something very cool with the brain. It actually chemically induces alpha waves in the brain. And these are just two natural compounds that just have this effect synergistically when put together. But if you don't know what alpha waves are in the brain, every time a NBA player makes a 3 point shot, like swish, right? Or an artist does a masterpiece, they call it they're in the zone, right? So they've done studies and found that they're actually in alpha waves in the brain. So it is like your best creative, best in the zone spot of your brain when you're producing alpha waves. So L-theanine and caffeine put together will actually induce alpha waves in the brain, which is really, really cool. So it's great for mental clarity, focus, all that stuff. Um, if you're talking depression wise, things like SAM-E and St. John's wort. SAM-E is a mineral, it's a methionine mineral, I believe. It's really great. And St. John's wort takes a little bit of time, but it's really, really good. There's a bunch of different other things. Magnesium is usually a deficiency in people with anxiety or depression. So, super important. Vitamin D. My goodness, vitamin D is very important. But the most important thing of all for your mental health, and I stress this, far beyond any herb you can take, far beyond anything you can do, is get your gut right. So we talked a little bit about this last week, how your the gut brain axis is, right? So I'm touching my gut right now. You can't see, but there, getting your gut right. So your gut signals your brain constantly. Your gut is a second brain, right? So it operates in and of itself without your central nervous system. It has um, many, many millions of herbs, billions even, and just like your spinal cord, right? But it's connected through the vagus nerve. So stimulating your vagus nerve, um, which is getting into parasympathetic nervous system rather than sympathetic, which is your your fight or flight mode, right? So stimulating that through breath work, but also getting your gut right, which that bacteria, that really good gut bacteria inside of your gut produces neurotransmitters. Okay. And those neurotransmitters like serotonin are the happy chemicals, right? So those are the things that work in your brain to produce those feelings of euphoria, happiness, those sort of things. And I got a bee in here. Well, it's not a bee. I don't know what that is. As long as it leaves me be, I'm good. Um, but so getting your gut right is extremely important because that will send your whole body into a dysregulated state, right? So that is super, super, super important. Getting your gut right. If your gut's not right, I mean, I've seen where people get their gut right, depression just completely leaves, like completely goes away. So it's super important. That's the first thing to address. But if you want instant, like I feel something, that's where L-theanine, magnesium, and caffeine together, those sort of things will like amplify your day 100%. And then long term, SAM-E, um, and which we call it St. John's wort, those sort of things will completely um, completely change some things as well. So, but yeah, getting your gut right is probably one of the best things ever.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah,
Uh,
yep,
Matt, if I remember correctly, yerba mate had L-theanine and another amino acid. I can't remember that
yep,
did talking about why,
yep,
but
yeah, yeah. That's why I like things like yerba mate and guayusa because they have caffeine and L-theanine put together, so they automatically put you in that state. Really cool. Um, Green tea also has L-theanine. That's actually where that's where supplement manufacturers derive a lot of their L-theanine from, is caffeine or is green tea, and it has a little bit, of caffeine in it. But typically, this is your normal dosage, right? So typically, when you have caffeine and L-theanine, you want to double the amount of milligrams of L-theanine you have to caffeine to get the right ratio. So if you have 150 milligrams of caffeine, you want 300 milligrams of L-theanine, right? Bam, focus, right? Now, if you get up to like, if you're one of those people that get 200, 300 milligrams of caffeine in one go, probably don't want that much L-theanine, but somewhere around the 300 to 400 milligrams of L-theanine is kind of like the high mark. You don't want to go any higher than that. Um, so yeah, you don't want to double it in that instance, right? So
Matt, you're gonna have to quit using such spiritual discernment when going through these herb talks now. You know how I am
oh
about my coffee.
yeah, coffee's great. It's just it's bad herbalism, right? So look, I love coffee. I drank coffee this morning. This is a tea, but I had a cup of coffee that from the beans you roasted. They're really good, um, and it's really great. It's just bad herbalism when it's just by itself, right? So there's just a lot of things, and it also depends on, and everything is there's so much that depends on how it's prepared, where it comes from, all of that stuff. That's extremely important to consider, right? Because a lot of these things that we do that we consider bad nowadays is not, it didn't begin bad, right? We just made it bad. We just suck, right? So we are more concerned about profits and distribution and all that stuff, and forget about the healing or the properties that were, or the preparation methods of how they once were done. And so we forget those traditions, and they were done in a particular manner for a particular reason a lot of times, and we don't quite understand that nowadays because we're more profit driven, right? So we forget about the health factor of things. So coffee that's done right can actually have great benefits. But coffee that's not dried correctly, not grown correctly, not processed correctly, first of all, can have a bunch of chemical residues in it. Second of all, can have mycotoxins and mold, right? So you have to be careful. And a lot of times roasters will over roast stuff in order to get those mycotoxin flavors and stuff out of it, but it's still there. You still have, the toxins in there. A lot of the stuff that you get on the shelf in the grocery store is not good, right? So that's why I like to order um, coffee from good suppliers, right? And you showed me that one supplier, which is awesome. Um, but that's why I like to make sure when I drink coffee, I have good coffee. I'm not just getting it from anywhere. Um, so that is huge to take into account.
That should apply to everything. There's
Exactly.
a, there's a lot of supplements and all out there that um, are owned by um, drug manufacturers and such.
Yep.
We got to be careful about who produces health supplements as well.
hmm Yeah, you have to be cautious about everything. So one of my biggest practices back in the day was calling manufacturers. Like I used to just call them and be like, "Hey, how do you do this? Like, how do you process this?" And they'll tell you because they don't think that there's anything wrong with it, right? And then you look up that process and you're like, okay, that's not how I want my herbs processed, right? There's chemical ways of stripping caffeine from coffee. So when you're getting decaf, you want to make sure that they're using a CO2 process rather than the chemical process, right? Because you don't want any of those chemical residues. So, there's different things that you have to look at of how they process it and everything. This should, like, I know it's like one more thing I have to do for my health, right? But at the same time, it should be something that you're invested in, right? I think at least. And you only have to do it once. When you find a good company, you order from that company, right? When you figure out who's doing what with what, you can discern a lot better as to where to get your supplements or where to get your stuff from. I can direct you because I've done that a lot, so to save you time. So if you have questions on that, I can help you find good manufacturers. I've looked at enough manufacturers and worked in the industry of supplements enough to understand where they're getting their stuff from. I used to import herbs from India, from China, So yeah, it's you start getting, and I still have contacts where I could import a bunch and do a bunch of stuff, but um, you become friends with these people overseas and stuff, and you understand how their processes work and everything. And I've had people that go out there and that know the people like personally. I think one of them got married to one of the manufacturers, one of the ladies at the manufacturer, one of my friends out in Washington, and so he regularly goes out to China and like visits these people, right? So he knows the processes and stuff. I haven't talked to him in a while, but that was part of learning where to get this stuff and why and how they do it. So, but yeah, it's important. It's important where it comes from because, like I said, we're in it. Like a lot of people out there are in it for the profits, right? They're not in it for people's health. So,
That's there's so many different layers of watching what you eat. Like
mhm.
first thing is pay attention to ingredients, and then all the way to understanding how they manufacture or process things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of areas that you can explore. And to me, the first one is watch what you have in your food, like um, avoid at least avoiding cancer causing agents like BHTA, EDTA, sodium nitrite, sodium nitrate, etc.
So
Um,
yeah, and those layers can be dissolved, right? So you can actually backtrack on those layers. The more you get involved in the process, the less you have to figure out, right?
mm,
So, like we talked about last week with milling your own flour, first of all, it's extremely economical, but second of all, um, you don't have to you don't have to look into as many layers because you are part of that process of processing it, right? So
yep.
you're just mainly focused on how it's grown then rather than how it's processed after because you're
Mm.
processing it. So there's some key things in there where you can eliminate a lot of those things you have to look into um, by jumping in there and figuring out or by doing some of the process yourself, right? That's why I like going to get this raw milk because I know where it comes from, right? So they're just eating grass. He's got them on no feed, just grass. And you go out there and you can taste it, right? You can taste it's got kind of a grassy flavor to it because a lot of those polyphenols and compounds in the grass are in there, right? Um, and chlorophyll and stuff like that. So it's a lot different than getting milk at the store where they strip it of the nutrients and homogenize it and kill everything in it.
There was a guy who saved his own life. Um, I don't remember or remember hearing exactly um, what he used. I thought it might have been kefir, but he had gone to many doctors many times over, and nobody could do anything, and they basically gave up on him. And he took it up on himself to research it, found a product that literally saved his life, and it was a food. And I thought it was kefir. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, kefir's pretty awesome.
yeah, he started a company called Beyond Organic that
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah, that it actually they have herb fed uh, cattle, and my understanding is you can actually taste the herbs in the meat.
yeah, yeah. You can. It's yeah, it's a big difference. That's why people say, "Oh, you're not getting this or this or that" when you're doing carnivore or whatnot. You're like, well, yeah. How's your cattle being fed? How's your meat being fed? Then you understand. Yeah, you actually can get a lot from meat that you think that you can't, or that you can only get from plants, right? There's nothing in meat that you cannot get from a plant, but there is a lot of things that you cannot get from a plant that you have to get in meat or
That's
some
right.
kind of product, right? So
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think you're right. That's what I've heard as well is vegetarian diets lack certain nutrients that they cannot get from vegetables.
Yeah. Now, mind you, I was a raw vegan for like 4 years, right? So, um, and I mean, y'all probably remember me being a raw vegan. I don't know if you do.
Oh, yep.
Okay. Because I was mostly in Germany and stuff, and then California, but I visited and stuff, and that's when I had all those herbs and everything. But yeah, that was back 2012, 2011. Um, but yeah, I was a raw vegan for a long time, and yes, it was great. It was amazing, but at the same time, I was detoxing um, all the crap I'd done to my body. So yes, it was great. I was pretty much getting rid of all the toxins in my body, but at the same time, over a long period of time, if you're not doing like super, super hardcore superfoods all the time, veganism can lead down a really bad path of nutrient deficiency. There's one guy out there called Matt Monarch who's actually videoed all this. He went and he still will not eat meat, but he has to go to the hospital all the time now because he's nutrient deficient. He almost died. He developed these really bad conditions and stuff. And I've tracked him just because of that. Because I used to watch him as inspiration to be on a raw food vegan diet, right? And then all of a sudden he disappeared. So now he's in and out of the hospital all the time and stuff. So there are issues with it. You can do it. There are people that do it and long term, right? But you have to be on some serious superfoods, some serious stuff, and be tracking your system and what's going on with it. Not everybody's willing to do that, so it's a hardcore lifestyle. It really is, and it's something new, something that um, has never really been done in our history, right? Vegetarian diets have, right, but not veganism. So it's kind of new over the last 20, 30 years for the most part.
Matt, you said that you take boswellia for when you've been injured. Do
Yes,
you take it orally or topically?
both. Yeah, both. Um, yeah, it's in some creams with MSM and DMSO and stuff. I try to find stuff like that. It's more targeted, really good stuff. Uh, but also orally with turmeric. So they have boswellic acid and turmeric anti-inflammatory combinations out there. One of them that I can tell you right off the top of my head is called Inflamease. It's a really good one. I'm trying to think. I was taking it during my poison ivy spout that swelled up my face and everything. Super incredible at calming my nerve or my immune system down, but controlling that inflammation at the spots and just helping with overall sensitivity to all that was really awesome. Um, so it can be used for a lot of different things, but it's really important too for autoimmune conditions. I think it's one that's on the list for every single autoimmune condition to take consistently, right? To help regulate your immune system, or at least the inflammatory responses within it. So boswellic acid comes from frankincense, right? So Boswellia serrata is the technical term for frankincense, just so you know. That's why it's in the Bible. It's an awesome healing herb or resin. Is that it for today? I mean, we've gone over an hour, so we're going. We keep diving in, going in over an hour. That's good though. We got lots of good information coming out. So, hey, Pastor Chris, I saw you. So, your mic's off.
Said I've been doing a little work outside while
Oh yeah,
while
there
I'm
you go.
listening.
It's a beautiful day to do that.
It sure is.
All right, y'all. Well, if you ain't got nothing else, we'll head on out. Thanks for joining. I've got you all in for the raffle at the end of the month, and we'll talk about probably next week what we're going to be giving away. So,
Love you, man. I
all
appreciate
right,
you, Matt. Have a great
no
day, brother.
problem. Thank you.